Hi, everybody. We are here with Christian Yordonov. He is one of our Anarchapulco speakers, and this is something new that we are doing. This is a sponsor highlight with the intent of really showcasing in a dynamic way what people that we partner with are doing, why they do it, and why it's important for you to know about it. We like to partner with people that we trust. We like to partner with people that are highly recommended. And Christian was highly recommended by Charlie, and we kind of have a rule that if Charlie suggests somebody, that it's probably a good idea just to go for it. So, Christian, how are you today?
I'm great, Miranda. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for being open to this new way of doing things that we're doing.
Yeah,
I do
yeah.
want to give a little bit of an intro that Christian came on as a speaker last year, again at Charlie's suggestion. And I was seeing what he was talking about, and I was like, hey, this is going to expose my own personal health issues a little bit, but I think it's important. I'm like, hey, I just got diagnosed with probable endometriosis. I'm suffering. I'm gaining weight. I don't feel good. What do you think? And Christian came on and he helped me quite a bit. I admit that I couldn't stick to all of it, mostly because right as I started to have the ability to get into it, Anarchapulco happened. And then after Anarchapulco happened. But what I will say is that the basis of it, because the supplements seem to be different for everybody, but the basis of it seems to be within the diet. A good focus on protein, a focus on carbohydrates not being evil. And before, the only way I was able to lose weight was going full carnivore. And I don't want to say anti-fasting thing, but it is kind of an anti-fasting thing. And I just come out of this whole like, I read Fast Like a Girl because somebody told me to, and I followed her diet super specifically, and I did her fasting schedule for 6 weeks, and I gained 2 kilos, and I felt like shit at the end of it, and I was like, why the fuck? Pardon my
And you
language, but
felt
that's
like
just how I
crap, huh?
speak. Huh?
And so you gained weight and you felt like crap.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. And my period
Well,
was late, of course, because my body was stressed. Yeah.
it's so frustrating because I see the kind of advice being given to the women in that lady sort of circle on Instagram or on YouTube, and it's like, yeah, my period is late. Can I continue this? Yep, yep, you can do. So it's really frustrating to see all of this because since basically late last year, I've been researching and writing my next book, which is all about why fasting is a terrible idea, not just for longevity, not just for weight loss, but also it's a terrible strategy to address most chronic health problems. So I'm actually deep, deep, deep into it. And I'll tell you, Miranda, I thought like I would debunk myself by going through all these dozens and hundreds of different studies in different areas. I thought I would eventually debunk myself and lose interest in writing the book because I don't have enough evidence and the evidence base is too strong. And every other day I'm like come down from the office, see my wife, I'm like, "Oh my God, honey, I found more crap about fasting that's really bad." So I really this is really grinding my gears when like women, especially like women of reproductive age, are basically instructed to starve themselves to better health. To me, and I've spoken about this before on my podcast, that is an aspect of the depopulation agenda, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself.
Yeah, I remember you. I'm pretty sure you had a sign at Anarchapulco that was talking some smack on fasting. But I find that refreshing because if I had $1 for every time somebody heard that I was having hormonal issues and stuff and they told me to fast to get rid of them, I would be a very rich woman.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
terrible, terrible thing.
It's like a panacea, allegedly. It's the panacea that will cure everything from cancer to diabetes and whatever else. And I'll tell you, just today I was doing the final part of one of the last chapters where talking about the disease aspect. And the amount of stuff I've been seeing on that I've been learning a lot about cancer and the fact that cancer is not only can they run on other stuff other than glucose, like sugar? Because like starve the cancer of the sugar. Well, first of all, cancers, they can run on fatty acids. They can also run on they can use some amino acids, right, from protein, which the body has them. You have fat, you have protein, and on the body. So the whole sort of starve cancer away is a complete fairy tale. And even what I saw today is there's even evidence that cancer, at least some tumors, can use ketones. So it's like the whole thing is a sham, the starved cancer of sugar, and sugar feeds cancer. Because even if you do fast, like you always, this is a huge myth that you just switch to fat burning and ketosis. But no, you will, no matter how deep into a fast you are, you will always produce a baseline of glucose, which happens by you degenerating your bones and your muscles and your joints and your organs, and that the protein of that, the amino acids of that, then get turned into glucose. At least some of them do. So, like, and this is what most people believe, and I'm like, whoa. And this is what big doctors, big health influencers are preaching. I'm like, how could we be so far off base here? It's kind of strange.
The interesting thing is, like, I used to edit the Carnivore podcast because I used to be a big proponent of that. And I used to edit the Carnivore podcast for Sean Baker. So I
Oh
was
wow.
watching a lot of these success stories. And one of the things that I was noticing was there were quite a few people that were saying that, like, oh, I went carnivore and then my cancer went into remission. But the biggest thing that I was noticing with these people is they were highly inflamed eating a lot of shitty foods. So when you
Yeah.
just pull everything out and you're just eating clean beef and salt, it would make sense, right? But
Yeah.
then on the opposite side of the spectrum, and I'm curious as to what you think of this therapy, my partner, he is really into the Gerson therapy. And the
Hmm.
Gerson therapy is literally the opposite of the carnivore diet, and yet has people just the same talking about miraculous
Yeah.
results, kicking cancer. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's the thing. Like literally combining the two is probably somewhere in the middle. So not like 3 pounds of beef a day, but depending on the person, a pound of beef maybe, some other kind of nutrition, animal based, and then clean organic juices for with lots of that's gonna give you structured water, potassium, vitamin C, maybe some other minerals, some flavonoids and stuff, and of course the salt is really really great. So like and of course the coffee animals and so on. So just combine, like that's the thing about it, is like we're humans, we're so tribal for whatever reason. Like you gotta pick a team. It's like we're almost forced to pick a team. Am I vegan? Am I gonna be a pescatarian? Am I gonna be carnivore? But there's good elements in all of it. So I think, but what you said is key. Well, like I've done carnivore and I've done plant-based vegan. So both ends of the spectrum and in between. And what I found is, especially with my clients, is when they have a good experience with plant-based or carnivore or keto or a few other diets, it's usually coming from a very kind of Western, sort of standard American type diet. So when you go from that to almost anything, it may even be fruitarian. There's this honeymoon period that can last weeks to months to even a couple of years, especially with younger people. So we then ascribe, and it's the same story with intermittent fasting, because
Hmm.
that also pushes us to do more healthy behaviors, right? So in all those cases, we then ascribe the thing we're doing to it being magical, whereas what we did is we removed the glorified toxic slop, as I call it, the glorified poison that a lot of us are eating. And then another beautiful thing that happens for many people is, because of that new thing we're doing and removing the crap, we also lose weight. But so here's the thing, we then ascribe the benefits of the fasting, the carnivore diet, or whatever, to all how amazing we feel. But the thing is, a lot of what's driving people's improvements in like biomarkers and health and inflammation and whatever else, how they feel, is actually the weight loss. So if you then let's say, take weight loss with improving the diet, some exercise, reducing calories, and then fasting, in all those cases, the thing driving the benefits people experience would be the weight loss, and of course cleaning up the diet if they were to do so. So then so what we are doing right now, a lot of us out there, and I was doing the same thing, is we ascribe, again to repeat it, we ascribe the benefits of an intervention, be it fasting, again, carnivore, whatever, as the benefits of the intervention, where it was either eating less food and losing some weight, which lowers your blood pressure, you snore less, your partner hates you less, you have sex more, you feel better about yourself, you get compliments on your looks. It feeds this sort of virtuous cycle where you want to do more healthy things. So that happens, and then of course cleaning up the diet, you feel better, being less poisoned, and all that. So we can do all of those things without doing an extreme diet or without starving ourselves. That's kind of what I think the main thing that will tie my book together when it's out, hopefully by the time Liberpulco happens, is that if we just do those things, lose weight in a healthy way without stressing the body, by cleaning up the diet, maybe exercising more, getting our hormones, our gut, our liver, everything working better, we're going to get probably most, if not all, of the benefits of, let's say, a fasting routine. That's kind of the thing. So those are the things we should be focusing, not elevating our stress hormones for 18 hours a day or for 5 days at a time, which degenerates us and messes with our hormones. That's kind of the idea there.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about your program a little bit because what I found interesting about it is it was a pretty long questionnaire. You took a lot of information. I had sent you my test results that I had and you came up with a system with supplements, which I think that was the part I really struggled with the most because I'm sensitive
Mm-hmm.
to supplements. You
Mm-hmm.
came up with the diet thing, which was a very slight calorie deficit with eating very specific thing, basically animal protein, things like, sweet
Don't
potatoes,
give away all
fruit.
my secrets, Miranda.
I
I'm
know.
messing.
I'm
I'm
just,
kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm
I'm
kidding.
giving a synopsis here, right? But
I'm
what
messing.
also,
I'm messing.
also I wanted to mention is it like you had me on this app, and in that app, you had dozens and dozens of modules where you were explaining the reasons behind the various things. And it could be everything. Why is the diet structured this way? Why is this structured this way? And the whole thing was about sustainability. And that was what I was looking for because I can do carnivore when I'm at home. But as soon as I start to travel, which I do a lot, it is very, very difficult to maintain high fat carnivore. And it sucks. Like you get depressed after a while. Whereas I've been kind of more or less eating the way, except for when I was down in Anarchapulco, I've been eating the way that you prescribed. I started
Mm-hmm.
strength training with the help of a friend of mine. He taught me about that. And I still take some of the supplements you recommended, the ones that felt really good in the body. And just from that alone, from the sustainability of not having to cut all of these things out of my diet all of the time,
Yeah.
I have lost 5 kilos since Anarchapulco and I'm getting stronger and my inflammation
Awesome.
is down. Like now, if I overtrain like I did yesterday, I get myself into a flare. That happens, right? But like,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
it as a
amazing.
whole, that's something I wanted to stress with this interview was to mention that the system itself, the keys, the cornerstone of it, in my opinion, is the sustainability aspect. Now, there are certain things, I'm
Yeah.
not going to give your secrets away. There are certain things that are
I'm
intense,
joking. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like
But I'll just tell you, I did see some of your I was like, kind of looking at the clients' foods diaries. I guess the last couple of weeks, and I did see your diaries. Kind of, I scanned over them. So you're reading. From what I can see, like you're really kind of staying on top of the carbohydrates, which is super important when you're training more, because when
Mhm.
you're especially you're doing any sort of um anaerobic activity, you're going to be using your muscle glycogen, and you have a good several hundred grams of capacity there. So if you're not replenishing that on a regular basis, like daily, that can definitely kind of bring you into like feeling fatigue, not recovering well. So I was very happy to see that you're kind of staying on top of that, because knowing myself, being brainwashed by the carnivore sort of mentality, is I had the carbophobia. I had the carbophobia. So it took me a while to kind of get that out of my head. And I still have clients that months into the program, they're still like, can you just explain to me why the carbs are like not the devil again? I saw a podcast by XYZ. I'm like, just read my book again, watch the videos, like you know. So it's a really good thing because it can't, like I said, it can't take quite a long time to undo that, especially because I had no idea you were editing which by the way I really love Sean Baker. Like he's actually like a really cool down to earth guy, and I know he's helping people. But what you said is very true, because the sustainability aspect, especially for women, especially as we get older, there comes a time when you hit 40, 50, 60 plus, you're not able to do the things that were stressing your body that you didn't realize were stressing your body when you were 20, 30, 35. So having a plan for what are you going to do when you're 80? Like, I don't think a lot of these people that are fasting out there and doing carnivore and whatever, and intermittent fasting and keto, I don't think they're thinking very far beyond the next 5 years, if that. Like, they feel good now, this is working now, but what are you going to do in 20, 30, 40? God willing, 60, 70 years time, when you're 80, 90, are you gonna be like one of the grandmas or grandpas there on the block hanging out and say, guys, I just did my ice bath, I'm gonna do like a cold plunge later, who wants to come and eat some, like sticks of butter and bulletproof coffee? It's like I don't think people are thinking about what's gonna happen when you're 80. Are you gonna be able to do all of these things? Is it sustainable, like you said?
I think for some people it is, because like, and carnivore, when you ask those questions, they always point they've got like three women or something that have been doing carnivore for 30 years and that they do look good, they look healthy.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that I've learned, because I was vegetarian also for a long time, for like 2 years, but like
Mm,
there is no one size fits all diet for a person, in my opinion, throughout their entire
yes.
lifetime, let
Mm-hmm.
alone for like everybody,
Everybody. Yeah,
you
yeah.
know? I think carnivore was important for me to do, to learn, hey, I don't have to feel like death all the time because I had daily migraines and constant nausea and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think I'm at a point in my health where I don't really need that, and something I've noticed, and I've had my friend, she's still carnivore. She's like, "Oh, so you're still eating a lot of sweet potatoes and you're eating a lot of sugar and well, your energy's gotta suck." And I'm like, "Well, no, I'm still eating like a pound of meat a day
Yeah.
and I'm eating those things and I'm drinking a lot of
Yeah.
water and consuming a lot of salt and I feel fine. Like I feel pretty good, all things
Yeah.
considered. So I think it that I think of all the things that I got out of your system, that was the thing that hit me the hardest in terms of like sustainable solutions combined with things like supplementing progesterone and stuff, which
Mm-hmm.
oddly enough, my test, because I know, hormone tests for women is kind of a pain in the ass because
Yeah.
it's not that accurate because my progesterone was high and my estrogen was normal, but all my symptoms were pointing to estrogen dominance, and
Of
progesterone
course.
supplementing helped. So it's interesting, the things that I got out of it as to what I expected to get out of it.
Yeah, and blood tests are like, because at the end of the day, these hormones, they're exerting their effects in the cells at the level of the tissues. Not and really, blood is really it's a carrier medium. It's a connective tissue that allows us to kind of move them in different places in the body. So a lot of the, to be honest with you, even like I used to do more of those urine test where you pee on the strips of paper, the Dutch test, and you see all these like amazing like lab results, and it looks really impressive for the clients to see. Wow, check out, this is how you're metabolizing your estrogens. I don't really think it's really even necessary to do hormone testing most of the time. Now, there's actually certain things that are valuable, but it wouldn't be like estrogen, you know, progesterone, testosterone, especially in a woman, is not really going to tell us very much. What matters is the presentation of the person. So anytime someone has anything related to uncontrolled growth, whether that's in the endometrium, in the the ovaries, whether that's like lumps, cysts, and tumors and stuff like that, that is very indicative pretty much all the time. I can't think of a reason why it wouldn't be. It's uncontrolled proliferation of cells, and we know that estrogen, that's a hormone that sends that signal to the cells. It tells the cells divide and grow, my pretties. And then you have a differentiating hormone like in men testosterone, in women progesterone, that would differentiate that growth, so it doesn't grow into a lump or a cyst, it will grow into tissue that actually makes sense in the body, and it's doing functions as opposed to just consuming resources and then eventually causing people distress, and then they have to, a lot of people, they go to the hospital, and then you're on the conveyor belt of cut, poison, burn. And a lot of people, they actually, some of these things will become controlled by the body, but they're sort of they use fear to get you to start cutting things, operations, chemo, radiation, where in many cases these things may actually be controlled, and the body may eventually even deal with them as long as that runaway estrogen excess is contained. Now, not always, but there's a lot that can be done without succumbing to the cut, poison, burn strategy.
So here's an interesting question in regards to all of this that I am curious as to your thoughts on because Anarchapulco offers bufo ceremonies and things of that
Mhm.
nature. And I've, had experiences with that, but not this year, but the year before, I had asked Bearheart, our shaman, like, hey, can you heal physical things? Actually, my partner asked, can you heal physical things with this? And he had a personal story where he healed a former injury of sorts, basically, completely. Like, it was a situation where he was told he would never be able to have kids again. And
Whoa.
he's got two more kids since then, right? And he
Your
attributed
partner?
it. No, so this was
Or bear
Bearheart. Bearheart
bear
had
heart?
my partner had
Oh
asked
wow.
Bearheart, "Can you heal
Oh,
stuff?"
okay.
And he said, "Yeah, I was told like I don't know something happened. I'm not going to give this all the details, but basically he was told he
Yeah.
wasn't going to be able to have children
Wow.
anymore. He had already had like one or two, but he was told no more, and he's had two children
Whoa.
since then, and he attributes it to the
Wow.
bufo." And during
Interesting.
bufo, that time I had had a wrist issue that was reoccurring. My arm started vibrating and it stopped hurting. And the reason I'm bringing it up is this year I had a different experience with 5-MeO-DMT, which is the pure molecule, not necessarily bufo, and I took it through a different ingestion method.
Mm-hmm.
But I essentially decided I was going to reprogram my reproductive system, and I was tearing up rose petals and everything. And when I came into your program, I had a cyst. Well, that cyst for months was just throbbing 24 hours a day,
Whoa.
just throbbing, pulsating, throbbing, pulsating. I went into that ceremony this year and I came out of the ceremony without pain. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm just relaxed, but the pain hasn't returned. And I
Amazing.
suspect if I go
Wow.
back and have an ultrasound, that cyst will be gone. So I'm curious as to what role these sorts of things could play within your system as far as healing stuff like that. Do you know about that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, just quick story. My wife, pretty soon after she started the progesterone a few years ago, she had some bleeding in the middle of her cycle, which is never had basically never happened before. So she was a little bit, oh, that's kind of weird. But then actually, this was in 24. I was at Anarchapulco, and I remember she texted me. She said she had gone to a gynecologist. So the backstory is she actually had they had found a cyst on one of her ovaries,
Mm,
and in 24, then in February, when she told me she was at the gynecologist, they did the scan, and the cyst wasn't there. So again, like if you add things to the body that are supportive, like be it minerals, amino acids, hormones, whatever the case is, antioxidants, the body can start doing things on its own. So that's one thing. But then, of course, to answer your question, I think for sure, like there's a whole sort of study of psychoneuroimmunoendocrinology. So psychomind, neuro referring to the nervous system, endocrino referring to the hormonal system, and immunology referring to, of course, the immune system. So there's like the body is, as we know, it's a single cohesive complex system. Now with the educational system the way it is, we compartmentalize everything, like in school, same in medical school, geography, history, whatever. And then there's like endocrinology, neurology, immunology, human, whatever. So the sort of I'm not like deep into psychoneuroendocrinoimmunology, but the there has been reports, like I remember one doctor, I listened to his book on Audible. He was like a medical doctor, but I think he was from Colombia or something. So he had gone back to his kind of roots, quote unquote, and he started the fellowship with a shaman. So he was participating in ayahuasca ceremonies, and he saw profound healing happening to people after the ayahuasca session. So I think, first of all, we have the entire sort of aspect of the mind being extremely powerful. So even if, let's say, imagine like if let's say you go to like a doctor or a practitioner and they tell you, take this supplement here, whatever that is, or this thing, and they just give you water or like a sugar pill, and you take that. We know that a good 30-40% of people that do that are going to have some kind of an improvement already just by the power of the mind. So you have the psycho part, then with your mind, you actually create or lower stress. You can literally sit there and raise your adrenaline with the way you think and even the way you breathe. And then when you raise one stress hormone, you can raise others. So cortisol, you can start a cascade of stress hormone increase. That then can damage tissue, can cause imbalances, can suppress the immune system. And then when the immune system then is suppressed or in some way perturbed, then you can have other imbalances. So I absolutely like, I mean, for me, my personal, especially the last Bufo journey I did in February at Anarchapulco, I've been telling people that when talking about it, it's like I got more healing in those 30-40 minutes of that session than I did in my entire working with coaches, NLP, hypnosis, LSD, all of the other plant medicines I've done before, all of it put together. So I absolutely think it is possible because again the mind influences the hormones. The hormones will then influence the immune system. The and I mean it just you can it's such a complex thing to think about, but you can basically will yourself sick, as we know, like with the nocebo effect, like the doctor when they cast a spell on you with the diagnosis. So it may be easier to do that because it's easier to destroy something than to build something beautiful and complex. But just in the same way, I think if we put our mind to it, we can absolutely influence this in a positive way to kind of make a very short answer very long and fucking sorry.
No, no, I think there's something to that. And I was thinking while you were talking, because I've had other Bufo experiences, but this one was focused on my health in particular. But what I think part of what was different for this experience compared to some of my other experiences was I had a better idea of, and maybe I wasn't following it the best at that time because I was doing Anarchapulco stuff, but I had a better idea of what is probably the right choice as far as diet and things like that. And so when I came out of it, because I think I'd been on progesterone for maybe a month before that happened. And I personally didn't have any bleeding. I would be surprised if I went back to the doctor and that cyst was still there because I can't feel it. If it's there,
Amazing.
I can't feel it, right? And that's what really mattered to me was that constant like it was hard just sitting there, just constant throbbing. And sometimes
Yeah,
it'd
yeah,
be
yeah.
worse, and I could feel it get worse when I get stressed. So I think that the combination of having like a sustainable plan, because you're right, when you get that diagnosis and then the doctor's like, okay, well, you can go back on birth control. That's what they told me. You can go back on birth control, and that'll fix it. Or you can just deal with it. Here, have some pain
Jeez.
meds. And I was like
Unbelievable.
having, basically the last 2 weeks of my cycle, I felt like I was on my period all the time and I looked pregnant, to the point where my dad told me the other day, he's like, oh yeah, I see, your videos, you're losing weight. Also, I shouldn't tell you this, but Uncle Gene asked me if you were pregnant. And I'm like, but I did. I looked like I was pregnant before I started the process. Like I looked like my mother did when she was 9 months pregnant because of the inflammation.
Whoa, yeah.
And at the time I was like, okay, the only way I've known of to reduce inflammation in my body and lose weight in the past has been go carnivore. But when you do those highly restricted diets, you almost get a sort of like a trauma from it because it's like it's so restrictive. And then there was points on those diets where if I did accidentally consume something else or on purpose consume something else, I would suffer and suffer and suffer. Whereas I think the plan that I like to say the truth is in the middle, and I think your plan and how you approach these things is very much like that. Because I remember reading the diet you had set for me, and I was like, this seems fake. Like,
I can eat these things.
I was like, I can't. I'm like, what do you mean you want me to eat honey before I go to bed?
Yeah.
That seems
You want
unreasonable.
sweet dreams, don't you? You gotta eat the honey.
And I told my physical trainer about that, and he's like, "Oh no, that's one of the best things you could do, and you should also do that before you go train." And I was
That's
like, "Oh,
awesome.
okay." So these things were converging, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
that's great.
so I kind of want to switch gears a little bit. I want to know, how did you get into this stuff? Like, what sent you down the path to start this sort of coaching?
Yeah. So for me, I was in a sense lucky that I didn't have any real health problems to speak of. Pretty much ever. I mean, like since getting into health, I did actually mess myself up with like keto, low carb, and stuff like that. But I only later realized that I had done that to myself. But throughout my late teens and throughout my 20s, my big problem was I was a little bit like into basically like drinking and just kind of being a little bit of a degenerate, and partying and drugs were involved, and I just didn't care. I used to joke that my body's a temple of doom. It was the food I ate. I don't think I ever bought or ate anything that was certified organic throughout those years. So then I met my wife just as I kind of was turning 30, and because of her I kind of started getting my act together. Now the problem there that happened is, so she was a former professional ballerina, and an injury had cut her career short. So she only like danced professionally for about 3 years. So when I met her, she was just out of kind of the thing. She'd moved to Ireland to her sister. That's where we met. And of course, as you probably know, that kind of training they destroy these girls' health. In fact, she just told me a few days, like last week, that they're like doing a petition now to report one of the teachers in that school for basically abusing these kids, and this is gonna be a big sort of expose they're gonna do, and they want people to be signatories on it. That's how bad it is. Like literally, a cup of buckwheat is your entire day's food, and you have to train 6 hours, and you're like 14, 15, and you're still developing and all that stuff, right? So pretty horrific. So uh, that meant, or what happened then in the first year that we were together, she was basically sick. I remember her being sick constantly. I can't even remember how many times, but I do remember that she like we were like, I wouldn't say we were normies or anything, but like she would just go to the doctor when she's sick because she was like really rough, and they just prescribed her antibiotics 4 times in that year that I remember, and it was bad. It was bad, and then she developed thrush. Sorry, honey, for TMI. It's in the book anyway. But she developed thrush from the antibiotics. So then she went to the doctor for that. And what did they do? Of course, as you do, they put her on freaking estrogen, on birth control for thrush. I was like, what the hell is going on? So if it had fixed it, I wouldn't have complained. But the problem is that that turned her, like changed her personality. It was like we were on the verge of, like cutting ties and stuff. So I begged her at one point, some weeks into it, to stop. She stopped, and she normalized. But then we went at some point we went to visit her home country for like I don't remember how long, it was like 6 days or something, and she basically spent most of that time in bed. Like she was in bed with like high fever, coughing her lungs out. And I was just basically I saw her hometown, basically her one of her best friends' apartment was like that's where I spent most of my time. Like this sucks. I gotta figure some stuff out. So that led me to start learning more. I started listening to health podcasts and reading books and starting supplements and all sorts of stuff. That's when I started all the intermittent. So 2018 really is when I started hardcore intermittent fasting and all this other biohacking stuff. So that continued on. I started learning, doing some courses and certifications because I just got super into all of this stuff, doing like lab testing, genetic testing. And then at some point, she told me, my wife, she told me that they suspected her nephew that he's on the autism spectrum. So then I started digging into that. So I started digging in, then I kind of gave my wife's sister, my sister-in-law, I gave them some stuff, some supplements that they can do with the kid to, clean up the diet, get the gluten out, all that stuff. So that progressed until I decided, you know what, I can help people with this, but I need to be taken seriously. I need to write a book. So that's when I wrote my first book. It was in 2019, and then I published that in 2020. And then since then, I started working with like moms and parents with autistic kids. I realized the parents were they in many cases they needed more help than the kids, especially the moms. They were like run ragged with stress and everything, and they were eating worse than the kids in some ways because um, they were just so stressed at putting themselves last. So that's when I started working more with the moms, and that then progressed later on to me kind of moving on into more the longevity aspect and just kind of work mostly with adults now. So, I've since then I've published another book on longevity in 2024. And now I have a whole program called the Live Longer Formula, where I've integrated everything from the last 10 years into the best bits in one place so that clients that come to me they know not just what to do, exactly what to do, it's spelled out, but also what to avoid doing, like things like a lot of people are like, oh, this growth hormone peptides, the growth hormone secretagogues, what do you think of those?
GLP-1s,
I'm like,
yeah.
yeah, no, no. So the growth hormone secretagogues would be the ones that they're kind of subcutaneous. They're more like the uncontrolled stuff
Mm.
where it's because it's anabolic and it can burn fat. But the thing about it is that I'm gonna write that in my next book now. That's I've been working on it, like I said, for the last several months. Growth hormone is freaking carcinogenic, and we've been sold that nitric oxide, boosting nitric oxide, is really good for us, and that omega 3s. So all these things that you gotta do are important, but the things that you don't do, like fasting too much and whatever, taking omega 3s, those are just as important because you can make a lot of progress with the things that you do right, but you can then set yourself back and be like taking 5 steps forward, 3 steps back with a lot of the other things like resveratrol, taking too much curcumin that can block detox pathways, even milk thistle that's like a great apparent alleged detoxer that can also block some of the detox pathways. So I teach people what to do and what to avoid just as importantly because there's so many red herrings being thrown at us, not just in the mainstream but in the alternative mainstream, because a lot we all like feed from the same trough, so it seems like the information is getting disseminated from one source. It's just different interpretations. So the mainstream are have one way of talking about things, and then a lot of the alternative mainstream they just parrot the same narratives coming top down. That's kind of what it seems like to me.
Yeah, I that's super interesting. And I do remember little bits of your wife's story, but I didn't remember all of it, right? And so I think that's they say necessity is the mother of all invention. And,
Yeah.
sometimes when there's not really a solution, you have to be the one to make the solution.
Yeah.
And I also didn't realize about, you working with autistic kids because autism is the thing in my family. It's something I deal with. It's something my little brother dealt with. And he actually, in my opinion, he lost his life to it because he was drugged from a young age and then addicted to those drugs until he passed away from them. And
Oh,
so
sorry
something
to hear.
personally that I have learned is because a lot of people are surprised when I tell them I'm autistic, but I'm a very managed autistic person, like I have slight
Mm,
things about me, but I wouldn't consider this to be a disease or a disorder in terms of how I function with my body now. But I did have to build my whole life structure around both the combination of autism and ADHD to make it so I could honor the way my brain works without medicine, without stress, really. And um, so that's super interesting. That's super interesting
yeah.
about the autism part.
Yeah,
But
that's so. I had no idea. That's pretty rough. How old was your bro?
he was like 1 month away from turning, well, like 6 weeks away from turning 20 years old.
Yeah, I mean, like the what I've seen, like, cause for whatever reason, when I published the book, I just the really the most complex cases were the people that started coming to me the most. You know, it wasn't just like, oh, I think my kid might be on the spectrum. It was like we're talking about kids that are completely nonverbal at 4 and even at well, barely verbal at 6, and just kind of a lot of, you know, like just really rough stuff with sleep, with constipation, obviously cognitive function. So um, just seeing what was on offer from the conventional care was like this is it's straight up a crime against humanity, because I've even had clients that are doctors with autistic kids come to me, and I remember there was one dad in the UK. He was kind of managing everything, the supplements, the diet as much as possible. His wife is a general practitioner, and things were going amazingly. Like the kid started actually sleeping through the night because he was like screaming in the middle of the night. It was just horrific for both of them. And he was actually starting to poop much better, and he was like a lot less anxious and hyperactive and everything. So everything was going great. We're like kind of, just gradually making little tweaks. And then one day, the mom comes home and just stops the supplement protocols. He's got to be, he's like, he has to stop all these things. That this is what the dad relayed to me. And I'm like, and then he was like, he's regressing super fast. And just when I saw that, and this was one of the events, several of these events started happening where I just saw like what we were up against. And I just said to myself, you know what, this is too heartbreaking. I thought I want to be a part of the solution here, but it's just when you're up, because a lot of these folks, the parents, they go as soon as like they suspect their kid is on the spectrum, and they go to like some kind of analyst that quote unquote diagnoses them. What do they hear? It's there's no cure, it's genetic, it's for life. Like those are the first trauma based mind control brainwashings that are implanted into their head, that nocebo effect. So now at that point, they're like, there is no solution. Potentially we can manage some of the difficulties here. And so the parents might get on SSRIs, which is a great way for them to kind of get them into that sort of loophole. And then even they're going to try either antipsychotics or SSRIs on the kids. If they're very anxious, they might try benzos. Like the whole thing is horrific, not only because some of the symptoms could be caused by actual more serotonin, right? And adding more serotonin could drive the kids to literal suicide and violence. I had one client where the son, he was a bit older, he had actually attacked his mother one day. He like hit himself, and he was like on 3 medications. I'm like, those are the things causing that. It's not his autism, it's the chemical imbalances caused by these freaking poisons but that was also a doctor, so he was like completely indoctrinated to the system. And a lot of the things that those drugs do that are beneficial actually can be achieved with regular run-of-the-mill supplements you can buy from Amazon, iHerb, etc. Things that work on dopamine, breaking down serotonin, obviously getting the gut improved. That's super important. But a lot of those things are deficiencies, toxicity, imbalances, and of course, vaccine injuries are a great precipitator of these things. They kind of push the dominoes in that direction, and then the rest goes awry, and then all that inflammation, oxidative stress, that depletes the nutrients that the kids are already eating very little of, that causes pronounced nutrient deficiencies, and then these things just snowball. And so a huge, even with one child that's kind of relatively severe, moderate to severe on the spectrum, it's such a huge ball of yarn. And unless the parents are cooperating with the practitioner, and they don't allow Western medicine to interfere with poisons, it's such a difficult process. It's at the same time heartbreaking and very frustrating for everybody involved. So to be honest with you, Miranda, I said to my wife, I cannot be a martyr here and just keep banging my head against the wall, because, like, I will quit. I'll go and do something else. I'll figure out another business to start, you know?
Yeah, the programming there is super strong. Like in the case of my brother, he was diagnosed at 4 years old and immediately put on, and it still to this day blows my mind. The fact that anybody that prescribed him what they prescribed him was surprised about the drugs he ended up addicted to. Because basically they said, okay, so from now, from 4 years old until 10 years old, when we are going to stop these medications, he will be on two drugs. One of them was Adderall, which is basically methamphetamine.
Yeah.
There's like one molecule difference or something like chemically.
Mm.
And then the other one was literally an adult blood pressure medication that would lower his blood pressure to the point to where it would knock him out. And like my family used to joke about it because if you gave him his pill too early, he would fall asleep during dinner, just face in bowl. He would
Jeez.
fall asleep while walking up the stairs to his room and fall down the stairs. And then they wonder why, okay, they literally just completely cut him off of those things at it was either 10 or 12. And then they wondered why he was addicted to meth and heroin in his adulthood. He was literally using in the same way, meth during the day and then heroin at night to be able to sleep. And it was just because, like, the reality was, like, he wasn't nonverbal. He was that part, because they say the spectrum is a line, right? The spectrum is actually a
Yeah.
circle. And it
Mm.
not, in my opinion, a severely autistic kid isn't always nonverbal. And that was the situation with my
Yeah.
brother. In fact, he was
Yeah.
the opposite. Like, he would, I remember before he was medicated, it was 3 in the morning and he just can't stop talking. And we were having, like, we were visiting and he just couldn't stop talking. But it's really interesting how the system is just, okay, let's just put these kids on drugs. And the reality is the more majority of them continue to struggle with substance abuse throughout their life,
Mm.
That's just where it is. Whereas I, presented slightly differently and I wasn't destructive and aggressive in the way that my brother was. And so nobody ever thought to diagnose me and I was never put on medication. And I found ways in my adulthood to manage it, but like
Yeah.
it is one of those things where it really is about it's about health and it's about emotional health too and stress because I've realized I was autistic because I was having these episodes when I was in my relationship with my ex where I would just start uncontrollably hitting myself. And he thought it
Yeah.
was a thing for attention, but like it really wasn't. I would feel it coming on and I would run into a room where nobody could see me and I would just hit myself till I couldn't see straight. When I Googled it, autism came up and then I realized I had all the symptoms. But
Damn.
that is one of those things where I think it's really misunderstood by a lot of people. I think there is a genetic component, but there is that
There's
vaccine thing,
definitely,
you
yeah,
know?
I'll tell you, this is very interesting. There over the years when when I was working in various companies back in the day when I was kind of working in tech and stuff, and there was certain guys that I would work with that I would always like get a specific sort of vibe from, like not in like a super negative way, but they just kind of would look at me in a strange way every once in a while, and then when I was writing the book, I kind of started, sharing it with people from my past, and several, I won't say a lot, but several of those guys, then by then they had kids and stuff. So several of those guys, they told me, "Oh, I'm gonna buy the book because my son is, 3, 4, he's on the spectrum." So I think like there's definitely like the way you might have a family history of cancer, and then someone like we have in my family more like of heart disease, atherosclerosis. Like we definitely have like our genetic predisposition for certain things more so than others. Like some people might have more Alzheimer's, so it definitely seems like there's a susceptibility potential in terms of genetics for autism. But I'll tell you, as I was researching the book in like I started a lot of that research in 2018, and then in 2019 is when I decided to actually like go hard and actually I spent 8 months just just working on that like 12, 14 hours a day. So during this time, that's when I was like, I was telling, we weren't even married yet with my wife, but I told her like, all right, well, definitely not gonna be vaccinating our kids one day. And she was still like, yeah, we have to research some. Maybe there's good vaccines. We have to research. I'm like, I'm pretty sure like I don't need to research anything because like even as I was reading in the research, you have to you have to tiptoe through the tulips and be super careful to make sure that your stuff gets published because if you start calling things out, you could destroy your career forever. But even in spite of that, I saw in multiple places in this autism research where the researchers were questioning why are we injecting our kids with like thousands of micrograms of aluminum, for example, directly into the bloodstream, not through, not that's not dietary exposure, where the gut can protect you, you might not absorb it, you could detoxify it in the liver. There's like several layers of protection if it's like just dietary aluminum exposure, for example, or let's say from air pollution. But the even researchers were like, and there was I even saw one paper where they were talking about you could use other much safer things as the adjuvant for the vaccine, like zinc instead of aluminum. Of course, that's if you even believe that a vaccine is necessary. But the point is that even then they were talking about the potential dangers and harms and safer ways to do it. And in spite of that, oh, they threw us a bone, they took the mercury out of whatever. But like the like I knew you one, and this is something we've spoken to friends here that have kids. Is as soon as you do a little bit of research, if you have a modicum of intelligence, you realize that this is not something you want to do to your child. The only person that does this to their child is simply still ignorant and hasn't done the research with an open, intelligent sort of mind. Um, so I think that that's definitely a huge component, not just to autism and ADHD, but also there's a lot of other stuff like asthma. Now you have the pandas. That's kind of more prominent. There's all these sort of autoimmune type issues, eczema, all of these things are have a component, or at least most of them have a component of immune system dysregulation. And when you think about it, that's what these vaccines are doing. They're working at at the immune system level. They're perturbing something. So yeah, that's more of the story is like now that we know we cannot be a part of this agenda because we're perpetrators. And even I have friends here, sorry to be long-winded, I have friends here that are uh, just just last week, I was talking to one buddy. He showed me the vaccine sort of booklets he's doctored for his kids. I'm like, dude, I wouldn't do that because I don't want to enable this system. I would rather, deal with it and kind of explain my rationale and through whatever way I have to do. I'd rather fight it than be like show that I'm quote unquote compliant, even though it's with fake documentation and my kids are not vaccinated. I don't think that's the right way to do it because then you're saying this system is okay. I figure out my own loophole, and that's fine. But like we should be speaking out on the entirety. I want other parents, I want the teachers or whatever administrator in my daughter's preschool. I want them to ask me why is she not vaccinated. Not that I have to give them a reason. It's my choice. It's my child, and it's our choice as a family. But I want them to inquire because I want to, you know, put on the tinfoil hat and absolutely blast them with, the lizard people stuff. The thing that would
Right.
go down really well in Portugal, one of the most indoctrinated, brainwashed countries.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I mean, with my own thing with being vaccinated is like I was raised to anarchist parents and then I kind of got brainwashed by school. And there was a point where I was comparing, because I had access to all my documents and I was comparing my vaccination sheet to my best friend's because she had told me, oh, I just got this vaccine and my whatever symptoms hurt. And I was like, wait, you're still getting vaccines? And she's like, I get vaccines every year. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I go and I look at my card and I was like, wow, I
I'm
stopped
behind.
getting them at 4, like
I
I
need to
didn't,
catch up here.
yeah. And I even told my dad, I was like, Dad, what the fuck? And he's like, oh my God. He's like, I don't really believe in those. And anyway, we,
Amazing.
we stopped getting those for you because I had a issue where I had a mulberry tree pollen issue, and he's like, well, that started to
Hmm.
get worse, and you were having constant asthma attacks even with that, and there was some emotional stuff that was happening, and he's like, so your mom said that she wasn't going to take you for him anymore, and I just supported her, you know.
That's
Whereas now,
amazing.
like I had, if I would have even gotten one less vaccine, I would not have been able to attend college without getting that vaccine because of how little vaccines I had, right? Looking back
Oh
now, I'm
man.
like, thank God for that. But what's interesting is I've become more convinced than ever that the basis of autism is actually a genetic thing. Because, I mean, I'm not going to name names here, but I've met a lot of anarchist, unvaxxed kids out of the system that are very autistic, right? However,
Mm.
it makes you wonder what sort of body, emotional situation would they be in had they gotten those shots, right? And I think
Oh
that the
yeah.
vaccines kind of turn that stuff up to 11,
Exactly. They
you
can be the
know?
trigger, the spark that lights the flame. Yeah.
Yeah, like turn flips the switch and then all of a sudden a kid that's kind of quirky that talks too much about bugs and isn't that great at making eye contact becomes a kid that's, hurting
Yeah.
himself just to get by, you know?
And that's the other thing that because like through my research like for the first half of the book the autism book from 2020, the first half is like the health challenges that autistic kids have like from the research, and then the latter half of the book is about like lab testing, supplements, diet, or what to do about it all, right? So in the research, like things that are associated with autism will be things like deficiencies of certain things, vitamins, minerals, toxic metals like mercury, aluminum. But that the other thing, constipation, gut dysfunction, certain bacteria like I think Clostridium difficile was one. There was a few studies with Candida being elevated. So it's not like it's just the vaccine. This is what I've spoken about it on other podcasts I've been on. It's like I hate it when we label things as cancerous parasites or this is the 5G, or it's never just one thing, because a lot of these kids, yes, their parents might be anarchists, and that's great, but they still may be getting a lot of exposures from the environment, from diet. Like a lot of kids, it's so difficult to even my kid, I know, like we all the food we buy is organic, but it's like she wants to eat, chocolate rice cakes and organic chocolate. So it's still difficult to get them to eat like super clean, even though you know that they're supposed to do that, because you can't reason with like a 4-year-old. It's just like you're better off like go talk to your dog and teach it English or something. So there's a lot of other aspects in the environment. Pollution. That was another thing, is air pollution, PVC floors. Like there was one study that homes, this was in, I think, in Sweden. It's a long time now since I've done this research, but it was a Swedish study where homes with PVC flooring, like vinyl flooring, there was an association with autism. Even living closer to, I think it was golf courses, and then there was another one closer to like certain agricultural sites, I think for strawberries or something, that certain chemicals, fungicides are used for, and not to mention glyphosate. So you have a huge number of factors that are like toxic exposures from the diet, the environment, and then you have all the other stuff. For example, moms being on SSRIs. Like you may be an anarchist, but I know lots of anarchists who have been on SSRIs, who have like just been through the ringer, have been on, women having been on a birth control, and we wake up, but sometimes the past still haunts us. So it just like we have to factor that in. There's so many, and Jeff talks about this all the time on his walk and talks. Like we're getting bombarded from all levels, so we have to factor that in when we are creating a strategy, when we're starting to take responsibility for our health. It's not just getting the PUFAs out of our diet. It's not just getting having EMF hygiene. It's also light hygiene. Obviously, water is important. Everybody knows that. But it's also like a lot of the time there's a dozen other things that we're not thinking about. It could be that we're living in a place where there's a lot of air pollution and we just don't realize it because like New York, Los Angeles, whatever. Like we don't realize how much air pollution is actually diminishing our health and our children's health. So there's a bunch of other stuff. So I totally agree with you. There's a susceptibility to it, and if you stack enough of these sort of, let's say, enough firewood in a child, be it from, again, from food, from environment, from whatever else, mother's health, when the mother, like the mother's health greatly can affect this as well. Like, for example, just sorry, again, long-winded, but even like mothers with autoimmune stuff that had kids, there was a higher incidence of autism, like when the mom had things like type 1 diabetes and things like that. So there's a lot of things. If you stack enough of them in against a child, then you could tip them over, into something that can start to be quote unquote diagnosed as autism. And unfortunately, the thing that's probably one of the most potent triggers would be this vaccine schedule where you're getting dozens and dozens of these and directly into the bloodstream. I think this is, to me, it's like I know, I understand it, I intellectually I understand it, but like deep inside, like I every time I think about it, I shudder to think that we're continuing as like this massive population, we're continuing to allow this most heinous of crimes against our children. It's absolutely unbelievable that we are this sort of passive when this is happening to our children.
Yeah, there's really, in my opinion, there's something to that. And, when we talk about things like the food, the reality is, unless you're living in a country where glyphosate and things like that are completely banned, even if you're buying organic thing from certified organic farms that are verified to only use organic products, when rain happens, there's no way of stopping the glyphosate from the farms around them
Yeah,
from coming onto their
yeah,
property or the other things, the chemtrails and all of that stuff. There's no way to stop that from getting into your crops unless you're an underground organic farm, which is where, as far as I know, those don't exist. It
yeah,
is it is really that's why, like I have a lot of friends that live in the United States. They eat all organic. They're even homesteading and they're still having these health issues that are common for people in the US. And it's because of physically where they're
mm-hmm.
living, and that's why when they visit Italy and other places and even Mexico, like Mexico is a completely different ballgame when it comes to farming. And there's a reason why the people here in general are more or less healthier than the people in the United States. So
Yeah.
that's super interesting to me. I had written down a note earlier in the conversation back when we were talking about fasting that I want to touch on real quick. And do you know who John Taylor Gatto is?
Yes.
He was
Yes.
the New York Teacher of the Year that was talking a lot
Yes.
about
I have
homeschooling
a
and
few
stuff.
of his books. Yeah.
He was
Dumbing
one of
us
the
down, weapons of
exactly.
mass instruction. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Well, he did this 5 hour podcast with Richard Grove called The Ultimate History Lesson. And one of the things that he said that I've never forgotten, that like I was reminded of while listening to you talk about how you were doing research and expecting to like find something to tell you were wrong. Well, he said, because Richard was like, how do you find all this information? How do you come to all these conclusions? And he said, well, I get to the point to where I am because I spend my entire life arguing with myself. And yeah, that sounds
Uh,
to me like that's what you've done with a lot of this stuff is you kind of went deep expecting to find, various things. And in a lot of these situations, you're kind of finding the opposite with everything from carbs to fasting to all the other various things
yeah,
that just don't fit. Would you agree
yeah.
with that?
Yeah, yeah, and it's like they say like if your hypothesis is correct, it should be strengthened as the body of research or knowledge um, grows. So, for example, if you look at the cholesterol and heart disease hypothesis from the 50s and so on, I mean, it's I know most people out there, like kind of more normal people, they still kind of believe that because they've been just it's been downloaded into their mind. But if you look at it, like we're at the point where, uh, like it's not getting any stronger, and more evidence is debunking it. And the best they have is like these consensus papers where there's like the list of conflict of interest list is like a page long of all these like researchers that are their names are on the paper are getting have gotten honoraria from all these pharmaceutical companies. So with fasting, what it looks like on the surface level is more just research getting pumped out from the States, um, Europe, Asia, China. There's like tons and tons of research, and then there's meta-analyses and systematic reviews. So what it looks like is that the body of research is just growing, and then they're citing, oh, we these studies found benefits here, those studies found benefits there. So on the surface, it looks like the hypothesis is getting stronger. But the unfortunate thing I've had to do is like actually read a lot of these papers, which is like really just is enough to make you lose the will to live, because like I can't think of a more boring thing than to read about starving people or like intermittent fasting. I don't even know why I do this to myself. It's because I feel like this information needs to be shared. So as I've been going in there, I'm just like finding more and more reasons why it's a bad idea. And yeah, I know I'm not gonna make many friends when I publish the book, and because I've just some of the comments and emails occasionally I get are not very let's say polite. But I know I'm not gonna like win popularity contest with the book. But I figure even if let's say over the lifetime of the book, it sells a few thousand copies, and maybe several dozen practitioners also read it, so that they stop parroting the narratives they've been like literally just they're just been parroting this because, oh, I heard autophagy, this cellular cleanup, so I'm going to tell that to my clients, or whatever content creators. Even if a few dozen of people see this and they stop parroting this information, and a few thousand people kind of protect themselves long term, and maybe their friends and family members, I think it will have been worth the pain and suffering of the last several months of me researching and now writing it and putting it together.
Yeah, so it's interesting because the intermittent fasting thing, that was something that I glommed onto at the same time I got on a carnivore. And it's funny, it took me many years and going down like the women's health rabbit hole to realize that, as far as I know, maybe that's changed in the last year, but as far as I know, not a single one of those studies is done on women. So all of the
Very few.
statistics,
Yeah.
yeah. So like what works for, a 30 to 50-year-old man, of course, is not going to be good long term for a woman, right?
Yeah,
And
of
I
course.
think there's a balance, like me personally, I eat when I'm hungry and I don't when I'm not, I'm not like forcing myself, okay, I'm hungry at this time, but it's not my eating window anymore. If I'm hungry during that time, I'll do it. I'll just eat something or have something small, right? And it's interesting to me because a lot of these studies, as you're saying, when you actually look at the studies, the way that they do them is completely backwards. It doesn't make sense in terms of how people actually live their lives. And
Yeah.
so they get the results that they get, but are they
They're not
actually doing sound
generalized
science?
or exact. I'll give you one example that popped into my head because I have my kind of my book writing app here. So I have all the chapters and the topics. It's been an insane amount of research. This could be expanded into 3 books, but I'm just gonna keep it like to more general stuff so people don't get bored to death. But you could really uh go into a lot of depth in, be it for cancer or weight loss or whatever the case is. But there was just the example I want to give you. There was one paper where the guys were roughly all men, roughly 30 years of age, and they had a 5-year history of consistent weight training. So they they did 2 months of intermittent fasting, 16/8, and then there was a follow-up study where they followed some of those guys for like a full 12 months. So to make a long story short, in at the 2 month mark, the guy's testosterone, now these are 30-year-old men, well trained, they continue to train 3 times a week. Their testosterone had dropped like about 20-21%. 2 months into it, 8 weeks. And then 12 months, it was still there. It was like around 20-21% lower than baseline. So the question I asked the reader as I write in that section of the book is like, all right, so if you're not 30, if you're 40, 50, 60, or if you're a woman, or a woman that's 40, 50, 60, do you think you're going to have a better outcome here in terms of your hormones, your protective sex hormones, than 30-year-old guys that have been consistently weight training for 5 years? Do you think your hormones are going to respond in a more favorable way? So then we can look at like studies on how fasting increases inflammation or oxidative stress, or causes lean mass loss, right, from intermittent fasting. So each time we kind of present a small, because you don't have one large study that tests all of these things. It would be very difficult to do and very expensive and very little benefit to just have a study that shows you all these negative things happening. They like to do few markers so that, oh, it's just weight. So they do look at total weight loss. They don't look at how much of that was fat mass, how much of that was lean mass, because a good 70% of what you lose is going to be lean mass. Now, a lot of that will be water, but half of that 70% or so will be muscles, bones, and organs, right? So I've had to like piece together from different studies, different data points, that when we kind of synthesize it into like a bigger picture, then I leave it to the reader, and I'm going to be doing podcast episodes about this as well, all of these kind of disparate things. I leave it to the reader or to the listener to then make a decision for themselves. No, now that you have the full picture, because it's always been so far the one side of the coin where this is like the best thing ever. Oh my God, Jesus fasted. Don't you know? Jesus fasted. Jesus also came back from the dead, bro. You know, uh, Jesus could
Also,
turn
there's
water into wine.
have you ever heard of Amin? I think his name is Amin Hammond or something like that.
No,
He
no.
is a Greek. I'll send you a video that'll blow your mind. He is a Greek, like, I forget the name for it, but he knows ancient Greek and he's like one of the
Mm-hmm.
experts on that. Well, he went back and read the text that the Bible were derived from. Jesus, according to him, was a blood and sex magic practicing pedophile, and Jesus's 12 disciples were actually children. They were boys. And like, here's the thing though, like I recently went like down a cult rabbit hole and I've been learning a lot about like the Children of God cult and FLDS and stuff like that. And there is a big, strong free sex plus children narrative in all of those established cults. So for me, like I'm not so sure that like he would be wrong. You know, it makes sense that a
Okay,
religious
we've lost
zealot.
the Christian audience here, but
Sorry,
that's the
guys.
way I look at it. Yeah, that's the way I look at it. Like we look at, Mark Passio talking about religion, the etymology, relegare, to bind, to hold back. I mean, I get it. Like I believe in God. I get that aspect that there's a creator, but like, come on, like the religion. Just because first of all, in the religions, like I looked into it, not deeply. Didn't want to talk about that. I didn't want to like piss people off too much. The book
This
itself
is
will piss them off enough.
Anarchapulco. Sometimes we gotta ruffle some feathers, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. But like the whole thing about, and I actually did talk about this in my Anarchapulco workshop, because we covered fasting over the 3 hours in a lot of depth, like in a ton of depth. And I talked to guys like, there was like 12, 13 people in there. The guys like, religion. Like, do you think the religion is here for your benefit? I mean, come on, we're not 12-year-olds here. God is
Right.
real. God, the Creator is real. Source, all that good stuff. But like the religions, look at look at what the freaking Catholic Church has done. The Vatican. So just and here's the thing: why are these texts saying to fast? It's to for atonement for sin, to purify the body. They're almost never mentioning you're gonna live longer. This is a modern construct, and they're not saying you're gonna be healthier. Now the Greeks I forget his name. Who was it? Socrates or whatever. Like he would have his new sort of initiates fast for 40 days before being initiated. But like it's then they frame it as it's to purify the body. Now that purifying the body is such a freaking nebulous term. It's such a slimy term. Are you purifying yourself at the energetic level, at the etheric level? Like you're certainly not getting healthier after 40 days of fasting. If you don't die, you will be extremely weak, you will be emaciated, and it will take you a long time to properly recover to where you were. And then just to recover where you were, never mind getting stronger and actually, whatever else. So like the religious aspect is um yeah, they fasted, but like if I created a religion today and I was like an evil guy, uh and I wanted the plebs to not get too uppity, I would have fasting in there, I would have low carb diets, I would have all of this nonsense that we're doing now for health. I would have ice baths all the time. I would have the guys doing sauna, super hot sauna, to fry their testicles, to destroy their fertility. I would do all of these. Like women would fast, women would do low carb. They would become infertile in many cases. Like I would be doing all these things if I was like a ruler and a kind of a like started my own religion. I would be adding all these things, and I would of course brainwash you that all of these things will bring you closer to God. All your suffering, and then of course in the afterlife you will be rewarded with whatever else because you did all these things in God's honor.
Yeah,
It's brainwashing 101.
I've long since thought that religion is it's two things. It's one, a humans, we have this tendency to try to put explanations on things that which we do not understand, and that's a big part of it, right? But beyond that, there are a lot of corrupt people out there that recognize that they can use that thing that people do not understand as a tool to control, right? And so, yeah, I agree with you completely on that. Yes, maybe we'll ruffle some Christian feathers, but the reality is that anybody that really is coming to Anarchapulco and diving in and staying with us is going to be somebody who is at least willing to hear the possibility, right? We're not saying that God is a pedophile that, had little, sex, blood magic things with children, but Jesus, as far as we understand, was just some guy that people were following around, right? So that's an interesting thing for me. I have two final questions for you before we
Hmm.
wrap this up. The first one is, what is the most miraculous thing that you have witnessed with one of your clients since you started?
Just to kind of not spend too long thinking about it, I will mention one of my clients, Heather. She just joined. I don't know how long it's been, like a couple of months, but she heard me on Josh Sigurdsson's World Alternative Media, and she was like really struggling. She had p- um, PMDD, which is like PMS on steroids, so menstrual dysphoric disorder. And this is, I've had other clients with this, and still have some active clients with this. And this is like literally driving women to suicide in many cases. Like it can make a woman suicidal or homicidal. It's that horrible. And so Heather, she had horrific gut problems for about 5 years, to the point where kind of like a lot of bowel movements were actual emergencies. She's a nurse, so very difficult to work with like patients in a hospital when you have to like literally have an emergency bowel movement and multiple times a day. And a lot of like that also is coupled with like pain and bloating and cramping and stuff like that. So she had that, a lot of fatigue. And it was crazy. Like week one, the supplements hadn't arrived yet. She just started doing my diet. The all the cramping, the bloating, the diarrhea subsided. It Her bowel movements basically normalized over the next couple of weeks. But within like days, she was already feeling better. Also, because like she was getting some quick and easy foods to eat at work that were on paper they looked healthy. Like I would eat them sometimes and stuff. It was just the combination of things in her situation was irritating to her gut. So I just gave her like little tweaks so that she wouldn't have to like start immediately prepping food from home or whatever. And was still convenient. And then she said like week two, and I'm talking like within like days and weeks. It was amazing. So within the first 4 or 5 weeks, she told me a bunch of things, but one of the next things was like she said, oh wow, so before I would get home and just go directly to the couch and just be on the couch, whatever, now I can actually do things after getting home at like 8 p.m. So that was amazing. Energy started coming back. But then one of the most amazing things is that, like I said, PMDD means like women are like hating their life. So the week coming up to the period is like a horrible, horrible time. Now the period itself can be pretty horrible as well, but that week coming up to it is really, really horrible. Like depression, apathy, like literally women lose the will to live. And in this case, what happened is her next period basically caught her by surprise. I was like, I couldn't believe it because like with PMDD, like it can actually get worse before it gets better in some cases because you're pushing estrogen out, you're discombobulating some balance that the body was holding together. So her period came out of the blue almost, because she would know like a 10 days to 7 days to 10 days before it, like yourself, Miranda, like things start to swell up and you feel it's harder to sleep and you're cranky, whatever the case is. So that was amazing. And then about 4 weeks into it, she had some kind of really, really serious personal stuff. Um, but she said she went through everything. Like she was strong through it, and like every time she's on the coaching calls that we have, 3 times a week, like every time I see her, she has this like big, big wide smile and like this kind of look of like, holy shit, I did not expect. It's a 6 month program. I did not expect in like weeks to feel so good. It's like I don't I feel so great. And we got obviously the lab tests started coming in, and there was imbalances to address toxicity and deficiencies, oxidative stress. So there's imbalances in there that that do occur over this period of time. But we're just super glad that the horrible symptoms are out of the way. So now we can just kind of work away at balancing certain things like mineral balance and some gut stuff, gut cleanses, getting the liver, all that good stuff working. So I think I'll share that because that's one of the most recent stories, and it was like I was like every time she would come on a call, you're like, you're making my whole week. You're making my week. I wish every client had these results. Of course, everybody's mileage varies.
Right, right. Yeah. And I mean, I'm pretty sure at points I've dealt with a sort of PMDD. Like I remember before I knew that my period would be for sure coming within 2 to 3 days when I would have a full-blown panic attack, like not able to breathe, panic attack. And yeah, I mean, every woman has that kind of like sense of impending doom, like, let me just get this
Mm,
over with thing. And it's funny for me personally, I'm happy when I get my cycle because it feels like a flip gets, a switch gets flipped and I'm able to focus again. And there's no longer the impending doom thing. And that's like
yeah.
2% of what I used to deal with, which was I would just flip out, have a panic attack, be like, everything in my life is terrible. And then within, 24 hours later, my cycle starts. And it's like, oh, and that's more common than most people think. So I think that
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
that is a big thing. Okay. So here's my final question. You're working on the fasting book, and when that's released, after that, because you've already addressed autism, you've addressed then there's the how to actually live longer, and now you're addressing fasting. What's next? Do you
So
know?
actually, I was writing. Had sort of started the quite a bit of the research for how to actually live longer, volume two. So I was hoping to maybe do a 3 part series or maybe on a 5 part series there. But I paused that, even though it's a lot more interesting than the fasting research. I paused that because I really like honestly, it was the same with the autism book. I really didn't want to write it. I felt like I had to write it as a sort of like a service. And with this one, I already know like all my clients coming to me, they're already like a lot of them are, they've been on the podcast or the email list, so they know I don't recommend fasting. Most of them have stopped it. So they know I'm gonna recommend not fasting. But I feel like reaching more people in somewhat a controversial way because like it gets heads turning. I'm hoping to reach more people because, like I told you before, like especially during the heavy research part, the last couple of months, every other day I'm like coming down and like telling my wife, "Oh my God, I found more nonsense, like more stuff this can mess you up in the long term." Talking about, osteoporosis, losing lean mass, and how lean mass then can lead to frailty when you're like 80, 90, and then the osteoporosis, the frailty, you're then one fall, one trip, or even like sitting down or like a bump in the car could like break a hip or fracture a vertebrae, and then you're incapacitated in many cases. So like these things, like I mean, these lizard people, uh, they are playing the short game, the intermediate game, and the long game. So to me, what the most horrible aspect of this is that they got the people that don't give a damn about their health. You got, everything, drugs, alcohol, all of it there, poison food, Doritos. So they got that group down pat, and they're getting monetized through the pharma system. The intermediate people are also getting screwed. So there's a lot of people that are coming up for air. They're like, I gotta get my health into my hands and get my family's health into my own hands here. So they're screwing those kind of people. They're playing the longer term game. So things like fasting, low carb diets, supplements like omega 3s, like so many health conscious people take omega 3s, almost no benefit, probably all detriment to long term omega 3 supplementation. Gonna have a chapter that on the book after this one. So they're working on every single timeline or time length, time span, time period, jeez, and every single sort of category of person, the health nut, the super health conscious person, and then of course the people that don't give a damn. And of course those people are they're kind of screwed. But at the same time, we have to just really, really kind of reach the people that are into health, but are simply have been misled, they've been misinformed, and that's kind of why that's so important. But yeah, after that, I have a bunch more in the longevity series coming up.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to do this. I'm looking
My pleasure.
forward to posting it and sharing it around to the email list. And I think I'm going to share this because I've started my own podcast, and the whole point of that podcast was to record conversations like this, which very rarely get, recorded and shared. So this will be shared
Awesome.
on as many platforms as possible, including my own personal ones, just because it's been a
That's
great
awesome.
conversation.
Yeah, I think so.
Um, I want to say thank you for the help that you have given me in terms of letting me, kind of really try your program because I think in the team, because Kat had offered, okay, well, either me, you, or Jeff, we can do this interview. And I was like, I'll do it because I already have experience with the program to be able to actually, dive into it. It's a
Yeah.
whole different thing when somebody who's just heard of the process that you do is asking you and talking to you about it, whereas somebody that's been in it. So
Yeah, and I've
thank you
given
for
Kat
everything.
and Jeff copies of my book, but it's like who has time to read books nowadays? So they probably haven't read it. But yeah, I really
Audiobooks are the
enjoyed this.
way. I don't know if you've
Yeah,
done audiobooks for
I,
your books, but like
my Yeah, my plan was once this next book is done, I'm gonna get the other one with the same sort of narrator, so kind of keep it to the same voice. But I've been very very procrastinating hard on that front. But I know it's so important because I'm mostly listening. I have like at this point 200 Audible audiobooks. I mostly just listen to audiobooks nowadays. It's kind of unfortunate because your writing suffers, but now that I'm kind of coming up to like writing the actual first proper draft of the book, I've been reading more of my favorite authors because it's amazing. Like when I read their stuff and I come back to my manuscript, I'm like, am I like a 12-year-old dumb kid? Like when I look at this, I feel like I'm a 12-year-old dumb kid here,
I
the
think
way I
there's
write.
definitely a value to audiobooks. For me personally, I'm writing a memoir about my life, and most of the audiobooks I have on Audible are memoirs. And a lot of
Mm,
them are read by the authors, and I personally will always buy a book that's read by the author, regardless of how they speak, over a book that is read by
yeah,
somebody random because you can't get
so
the
true.
same
Oh,
connection to the
absolutely.
story.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's you just feel the energy and kind of the emotion around like the experience, whether it's now in my case, because there's a lot less like personal and anecdotal stuff, it can be done. I just need to find a sarcastic sounding enough guy, which is not too
I
hard, I'm
personally
sure.
think you would do a good job of narrating your own book because the reality is you can hear the emotion of the research that you've done come through when you talk about these things. So I'm just going
Yeah,
to
but
encourage you to consider that.
who's gonna want to listen to some broken English Eastern European guy though? Like this is for more like a American audience.
Well, here's the thing, like me personally, I don't necessarily find your accent or the way that you speak to be annoying. I watched a lot of the videos and I was able to understand you clearly and watching the videos in your program, for example, they give you confidence in the plan that you give. Because if you just deliver the text plan and that's it, whereas like when you are doing the videos, you're talking about a lot of your own experiences, you're talking about the research, you have more of that like mind-brain connection
Mm,
to what's going on. And I think
appreciate
that's a
that.
big
Thank
part of
you.
why people resonate with people like Sean Baker and stuff. Like no shade to Sean Baker, but that man sounds like his vocal cords got ran through a meat grinder. But people watch him religiously
Yeah, yeah.
because of the
Yeah,
passion
you
he
can
has.
the
So
energy. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think consider it. I think a lot of us will judge ourselves in this light, but the reality is you're that using your real voice to convey your ideas, even if a lot of it's research is, in my opinion, going to be more impactful than having somebody
You
who
know,
didn't do
I
research.
I will consider it, even though I have a feeling it will be extremely painful to actually. I know what it's like recording and then editing. I know how
Uh-huh,
painful
yeah.
that will be, but like you'll see. We'll see. I'll be doing Bufo next week, so I'll be like taking a week or so break from writing completely. So I will see. We'll see how I appreciate the advice. I may do it. You never know.
As somebody who trauma dumped her life story, like most on HBO, like most people don't realize that when I was like 8 or 9, my school had this like school-wide news thing, and I was in the class that produced that. And I couldn't listen to myself even speak a script without crying and feeling nauseous in school. And I hear you, like, I mean, I started a podcast, I've edited videos with my voice in it. I am not a fan of my voice. However, I've also realized that like people like to listen to me talk for whatever silly reason. So, I mean, our voice very rarely annoys other people as much as it annoys us.
Tell that
So,
to my wife. Just kidding.
uh,
My wife
yeah.
may not agree. I
Well,
can.
but here's the thing, like the ability to joke and the laughter and stuff like that, like that's what makes a story magic. Like the last thing I'll say on this is I recently listened to an Audible memoir, and the lady's story was not that like, I wouldn't say special, but like it wasn't that special. She is the typical American loudmouth lady that's very dramatic, but the way in which she told her own story, you could feel the emotion, and she had the genius idea of having her family voice record things that they said to her. So, like, at one point, you have her dad sending her a voice message about how seeing her go through divorce broke him, and he's like
Mm,
in tears, right? But man, like,
mm.
that way of doing it and just owning your voice and who you are, I think it always goes further. So,
Totally. And I have like just from the previous book because I was getting some of the studies from the back today to look at, and I saw some part where I had written some stuff like mega like people that know me, I know I'm like a mega sarcastic, always like messing around, like almost like this. Is this guy like literally 12 years old? Like does he ever like is he ever serious? So I have like all these passages in the book about how fasting will shrink your testicles, your balls, your webbles, and it's like are your testicles as big as tennis balls or perhaps those of your partner? Gross. It's like I'm like ew. So I don't think you're right. I don't think a narrator will realize that's how it sounds in my head. Like it's not gross. It's Gross. You're
Right, right,
disgusting, you
right.
freak.
Right,
But don't
exactly.
worry, fasting is gonna shrink your testicles some good 18%. Gonna shrink those pesky huevos down to size, no problem, you know?
Right. And and it's funny, like those 12-year-old boy relatable comments are exactly that. They're relatable. They're gonna, because like too many of these health books try to be too professional and then nobody wants to read them. So it sounds like you're striking that balance more than you realize. And I'm just saying, use it as your
It's
superpower.
exactly like the balance. So a lot of so the way nonfiction, especially health nonfiction, the way they balance it is either you have like this narcissistic sort of health influencer constantly talking about their own stuff, which I don't personally like, to be honest with you, or then you have like these sort of patronizing, sort of corny, cheesy stories about specific people, case studies, which I think is better, especially if you do it right. If it's not like just the same sort of cookie cutter thing that all the other books are, they're being forced to do that by the publishers. So I suppose my the way I do it is like I bring you to the edge of boring you to death with like some study found, and then I whack you with like like straight up retarded comment or two. And like I've had people tell me like there's literally like places where like I'm reading and like you catch me by surprise and I just like laugh out loud because it's like some crazy nonsense you just crowbarred after the dry part. So like I think that would be my strategy. It's not gonna sell millions of books, but I always think I'd rather be my authentic self. And if anybody doesn't like it, that does me a favor because then I keep the people that gravitate to me, people that actually like me. And the nice thing is that a lot of these people are from the freedom community, so I can talk about like cut, poison, burn, and like how ignorant conventional doctors are without sort of fear that someone will be like, "Oh, this guy is not even a doctor. I'm not even going to read this book," type thing. I will repel those people to begin with, and then only kind of my people will be. So I feel like, and I think you practice, you kind of live this very well. Is you be yourself, and then you will attract the people that are supposed to be attracted to you, as opposed to putting on airs and then wondering why, oh, my friends, I don't actually like my friends, or my friends are not liking me. And like we just do away. And I love this with the Anarchapulco community is because most people, from what I've seen going there, we're our authentic selves, and you're not gonna like everybody, but it also means that when you like somebody and there's some kind of a relationship that forms, we create these stronger bonds. Like I've been every time I go to an Acapulco for the last 3 years, and even being at the Liberland event in April, I make friends where this I know these will be lasting friendships for years, maybe potentially for a lifetime ahead. So that's the beautiful thing I love about an Acapulco, and again, why it's so. I think it's important for us to attract these people in one place because we're authentic. We're done with the bullshit. We're done with the bullshit. We're there to just be ourselves and share what we've learned. And that's another beautiful aspect of it is everybody has been down different rabbit holes. So you learn something from everybody, no matter how young, how old, or how different from you. So anyway, I waffle a lot.
Well, sorry, it started hailing here, which is why I looked outside. But I was actually thinking, part of why it took me so long to start my personal podcast is because I couldn't think of anything appropriate to call it. And people were like, "Oh, call it Miranda's Web," and blah blah. I'm like, that is nice, right? But
Cheesy.
that's not me. Whereas, like, finally, I was like, I just have to settle on it and call it what I want to call it, which was what the fuck was that? Because first off, that's my response to my life, but also the idea is to have these conversations that leave you mind blown and leave you go, okay, what the fuck was that? And it's a filter. And in certain
I like
people
that.
that are put off by four-letter words, they're not going to come around, right? The point
Yeah,
isn't, and
yeah,
I appreciate that you're the same way. The point is not to reach everybody. The point is to reach people where it's going to matter. So
yeah,
I
yeah,
think we're going
yeah,
to end on that. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. Again, Christian, thank you. And I'll be sad to not be in Serbia in person for
yeah,
Liberpulco, but I do know I am happy to have you be a part of that event.
yeah. Thank you
So
so much. I really, really appreciate you, Miranda. Thank you
All
for
right.
this.
Well, you have a good rest of your day. I'm gonna go make sure that my house is not being rained in because I have a lot of open
Okay.
doors right
All
now.
right.